Welcome to the Proud Psychologist podcast, where we look at all things mental health. Brought to you by me, Carol, an LGBTQ coaching psychologist. Goals. Everyone talks about them. Every year, people set New Year's resolutions, and each year it can seem like it's expected that we will too. The people who achieve something life-changing from a New Year's resolution are the minority, though. If you regularly go to the gym or a fitness class, you will have seen the influx of people in January and the fact that it peters out after only a few months. The thing with goals is that no matter how much we may want to achieve them, we often find it a real challenge to stick to them. Sometimes we even find it difficult to get started. This podcast episode has been one of those for me. Incredibly difficult to start and seemingly impossible to continue. Sometimes it's obvious what the problem is, like when you set a goal to run a 10k but you hate running. And other times it can be more obscure, like when I sit down to work on this episode because I love working with goals and they are so important to coaching as a whole, but I find myself procrastinating at each opportunity. You may be very aware of the centrality of goals, goal setting, and working towards goals in coaching already. Equally, you might not be that familiar with this, so we're going to look a bit more before getting into the meat of today's topic. One of the core aspects of coaching is that people identify, either on their own or with their coach, what they want to achieve, and then, with the support of the coach, they identify the steps they need to take to start moving closer to achieving their goal. Coaches provide some accountability to the process of taking those steps. So if they start procrastinating or encounter other blocks, the coach is there to help them work out what's going on and how to work around or overcome them. We can have goals in any area of our lives, so coaches like me are used to working with people across multiple aspects of their lives. There are also coaches who focus on specific things, like sports coaches and executive business coaches. We all work with goals. Sometimes the people I work with have very clear goals from the outset. Other times they can become clearer as we work together. I don't subscribe to any one-size-fits-all approach to goal setting, and it's my impression so far that most of the people I am currently working with wouldn't benefit from some of the really heavily structured ways we can set goals. I do want to be extremely clear right now that I do not encourage the use of SMART goals. I don't like them, I haven't seen them actually work for anyone, and I won't take anyone through that process. Goals and goal setting with me is not like the SMART goal process you might know from work. Aside from taking a different approach to the SMART one, I won't tell anyone what goals to have. Any that get set are ones that the people I work with want for themselves. If there's a hint or suggestion that someone else is pushing for them to set a particular goal, I will ask some questions to make sure it is what they want for themselves too, and that it's not just being pushed on them. With that, I've started touching upon what we need in order to achieve a goal, and that's that we need to be motivated to do it for ourselves. I see this plain as day when it comes to the array of books I have dotted about the place. If someone were to ask me to tidy them up, I have much less get up and go than if I've looked around and said to myself, right, I have finished with these, at least for today, so I'll put them back in the bookcase. As a teenager and even as a uni student, the tidiness of my bedroom was another great example. Encourage me to tidy it, and my motivation will be much less than if that same idea was internally generated. Maybe you have a relatable experience here too. I am big on finding, respecting, and acting from a place of personal autonomy, so I always want the people I work with to be in charge of their goals for that reason. The fact that it's easier to motivate ourselves when we've set that goal ourselves fits really nicely with this focus on autonomy and I think it's brilliant. So, we have the importance and impact of exercising our autonomy when it comes to goals. What else do we need in order to achieve what we set out to? The next one I want to talk about is the belief that we have the power to make the change or changes we have set for ourselves. So, when I set myself the goal of creating this podcast episode, I needed to believe that I had the power to make it happen. This can also be seen in terms of feeling like whether we can achieve the goal is something we can control. I had the belief that I could create this, partly because I've done a few podcast episodes before, but also because I know the topic really well, and it's something I engage with on a daily basis. Psychologists refer to this as having an internal locus of control. When we believe we have the ability to control whether we achieve a goal or not, we tend to be more persistent in our attempts and more likely to find a way to overcome or work around obstacles. We typically don't put much stock in the concept of luck as a determining factor in our success or failure when we have an internal locus of control. This is because we can see and value the things we did or didn't do that affected the outcome. Quite often, we don't have everything that is required to achieve our goal, so we need to believe that we can access the resources needed. This can involve things such as consulting books, websites, journals, podcasts, documentaries, how-to videos, borrowing or buying materials or equipment, seeking guidance or assistance from others, and also paying someone to help you get closer to achieving your goal. This all sounds great so far, doesn't it? And yet, if it were this straightforward, we'd not have a need for coaches, accountability buddies, etc. Most, if not all of us, have encountered obstacles and setbacks when pursuing a goal. Sometimes we know how to get around the issue, like when you're mowing the lawn, but your lawnmower breaks down partway through. Other times we can be left scratching our heads wondering why we have hit a wall, and other times we can be feeling a lot of pessimism and doubt as to whether we actually can achieve this thing. I love the depiction of encountering setbacks in the pursuit of a goal that we see in the Disney film Queen of Katwe. For those who haven't seen it or haven't seen it recently, the main character Fiona discovers chess and sets herself the goal of becoming a grandmaster. In order to achieve this, she needs to accrue a certain number or percentage of wins at tournament level. She wins her game in her first tournament between various schools in the region, but because she and her peers come from a disadvantaged background compared to the others, she doubts whether she deserved the win, and even questions if her opponent let her win. Her family's financial hardship is really highlighted when she returns home, and her brother needs hospital treatment after being hit by a motorbike. But they can't afford the medical bills or the rent on their home. The chess coach tries to encourage her to keep going with her chess, but she doesn't feel like the goal of becoming a grandmaster is realistic for someone with her background anymore, and she challenges him on this. It all looks very hopeless for her. The coach shares with her that he has been in a desperate place before, but that he's glad he kept going because he's been able to experience a lot of good as well. It seems that his words land well enough with her that, with a bit of time, Fiona became willing to play chess again with her peers. With time and more stability in her life again, Fiona does start to actively pursue her goal again and invests time and energy into improving her game. The whole film is based on real-life people and events, to the point where they show the real people standing smiling with the actors who depicted them at the end of the film. I think it's just before the credits. I really do think that this film shows a wonderful example of how setbacks and obstacles can be legitimate and real with things beyond your control. Yet you can also work around them or to overcome them. With things such as poverty, like in Fiona's case, classism, heterosexism, monosexism, ableism, racism, transphobia, sexism, etc., there can sometimes be little you can do about the individual obstacle or setback. And I get that that's frustrating and the prime breeding ground for despondency. It can be exhausting having to put more work in just to achieve your goals than people with a more privileged experience. And I'm not here to tell you to suck it up, pull up your socks and just get on with it. As we see with Fiona, sometimes we need to recenter, look after ourselves, prioritise other things for a bit, and get some stability back before we can find our way back to achieving our goals. And that's okay. It's okay to say, the system is rigged against me in this instance, and I need to pause so I can recuperate some energy before I can think about going after that goal again. When obstacles or setbacks are more personal, like with me on this podcast episode, sometimes we still need to engage in self-care before getting back in the saddle again. It can be necessary. Personally, I find that to be a bit of a dangerous trap sometimes, because it's easy for me to convince myself that deprioritising it in favour of other needed things is not only sensible, but responsible and desirable, even when I'm blatantly just procrastinating. Does that sound familiar? In cases like this, having a supportive person who holds you to account for your progress or lack thereof can be invaluable. Sometimes that's all it needs. Someone there expecting you to do something and make some progress. Sometimes you can feel like you're powerless in the face of whatever obstacle or setback you've encountered. It's times like this that whatever the problem, you might find changing the way you approach it to be helpful. In the book, The Power of TED, you can find a way to do this. I'll include the book details in the episode description. So, in The Power of TED, we are presented with a way of escaping the dreaded drama triangle, which keeps us stuck in patterns of feeling powerless and frustrated. When we are pursuing a goal, encounter a setback, and are in the dreaded drama triangle, it can feel like everything, everyone, or someone, something, is conspiring against you, and it doesn't matter what you do, you'll never be able to get it. You'll never be able to get it because of the force behind the setback. The empowerment dynamic shows how you can flip that script you're following and start approaching things from a place of curiosity and openness, to see obstacles and setbacks as challenges you can learn from. I'm not saying this is easy. Absolutely not. But the book does brilliantly break it down into easy to understand steps, stages, and language. The advice to view setbacks, problems, and obstacles as challenges and learning opportunities is often shared, but without someone taking the time to lay it out there that this is how you can make that shift, it's next to useless in my opinion. So, if you have struggled to translate this piece of advice into your own life, I highly recommend getting a copy of The Power of TED, The Empowerment Dynamic. I am not affiliated with David Emerald or anyone involved with this book. This is not a promo piece. Just a recommendation, as I haven't seen the empowerment dynamic talked about a huge amount online. Maybe I'll write about it on my website. I feel like we've talked about a lot here, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel with my own challenging experience working to achieve my goal of creating this podcast episode, because we're now at the summary/review stage. We need to bring certain attitudes, intentions, and beliefs to setting goals in order to optimise the likelihood of success. These include things like being self-motivated, aiming for what we want so we can move towards it, believing that we can make it happen somehow, recognizing when to pause and focus on looking after ourselves, having supportive people around us, and being able to treat setbacks, obstacles, or problems as opportunities to learn from so we can increase the probability of succeeding. We also need to recognize when things like systemic structures, institutions, societal attitudes, abusive, manipulative people, etc., are making things harder for us so we can respond appropriately. Now, I really hope this episode has been helpful for you. As always, please do let me know what you think, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take it easy.